the weakest military in the world. If it was merely a competition for domination on the global stage, which nations would be most likely to engage in conflict? Considering this question is a peculiar thing to do. More often than not, when we think of the military, we think about the superpowers of the world, which include countries like the United States of America, China, Russia, and others. On the other hand, we rarely take into account the opposite viewpoint, the countries that have developed armed forces. But to tell you the truth, their forces are so insignificant that some people could be questioning what the point of having them is. Benin. For the average person, it is quite unlikely that they would be able to recognize Benin on a map. In addition, the fact that Benin is only a narrow strip of territory is another factor that contributes to the overall weakness of the nation's military power. It is flanked by Ghana and Nigeria, two countries that are far more powerful militarily. However, this wasn't always the case in the past. Benin was blessed with an abundance of wealth that was not anticipated during the period extending from the 1200s to the 1800s. The size of its kingdom was significantly greater than it is today. It even encompassed a significant chunk of Nigeria. On the other hand, as is so usually the case, a civil war broke out amongst members of the royal family. This conflict dealt devastating blows to the nation and made it possible for the British to invade in the year 1897. Before Benin City was included in what was then known as British Nigeria, it was destroyed by fire from the British during that period. Even after all of that was completed, Benin continued to be a puppet state of Nigeria for a short period before it finally earned its independence. Benin, on the other hand, continues to be a fairly populous nation, despite the rapid decrease in its social standing. The fact that this narrow strip of land is home to more than 13.7 million people is evidence of the resiliency of the region. Furthermore, famine is another problem that affects its military. If we look at the Global Hunger Index, Benin comes in at position 22.6. The level of hunger in the country is categorized as serious. According to the Global Hunger Index for the year 2020, there has not been a significant increase in the level of danger to the point where Benin is currently experiencing a famine. It does, however, point to a war within the country that is not military to explain why its troops are so weak. When it comes to the military, Benin maintains 5,000 active military members without employing paramilitary or reserve individuals. The bulk of them are currently serving in the nation's armed services, with only 500 of them being assigned to either the nation's Air Force or Navy. It is not particularly noteworthy that it has an Air Force. According to Global Firepower, the company only possesses 2 aircraft and 2 fixed-wing transports, and only one of those aircraft is equipped for combat. In light of this, when we say that Benin has an Air Force, we are using the most inclusive definition that is conceivable. It does not have a fighting force, but it does have an airplane mounted on it. Furthermore, its navy is performing significantly worse. Benin has a coastline, but it does not have any police boats. As a result, the country's 200 naval personnel are vulnerable to an invasion that is carried out by water, rendering them entirely ineffective. Despite all of this, Benin spends a surprising amount on its military, at least when compared to the majority of the other countries that are included below. There was a total allocation of $97.2 million to the military, which is an amount that is pretty consistent with the expenditures that it has made over the previous 10 years. This adds to the surprise of its acute underpowering. To safeguard a force of roughly 13 million people, however, a military force consisting of only 5,000 soldiers is hardly noteworthy. Benin, on the other hand, does not have any obvious air or naval presence, which means that it would only be able to defend itself on land. This is because any nation that has even a small air force is likely to be able to quickly and effectively eliminate its army personnel. When you add all of that to the fact that Benin is constantly threatened by famine, you can see that the country is as far from being prepared for war as it is possible to get. Bhutan. On the other hand, the numbers don't appear to be all that bad when it comes to our nation having the weakest military. Even though the country has a population of only about 850,000 people, it is home to an active military force consisting of 8,000 troops. As a result, it is positioned higher on this ranking than numerous other countries, including Moldova and Benin. Indeed, it does not possess any navy at all and only a handful of basic helicopters for its air force. Its air force is extremely limited. When it comes to absolute numbers, on the other hand, it ought to be ranked somewhere in the middle of this checklist. This individual is not the weakest member of the group, but they are also not the strongest. However, if you have been following along up to this point, you are already aware that not all numbers are similar to one another. The fact that Bhutan's military forces receive no aid at all is one of the factors that contributes to the country's precarious position. The figure of $25.12 million that was mentioned is the sole amount that is known that does not reflect zero, according to the World Population Review. There is very little information accessible regarding its military budget. When compared to Moldova, which is widely recognized as having some of the world's most weakly supported military forces, this is a lower number. However, Bhutan's vulnerability stems mostly from its diplomatic and physical status, both of which make it a target and an ally of countries that are significantly more powerful than Bhutan. If you want to understand why, you need to be familiar with the location of Bhutan. The nation is quite a small territory that is situated to the northeast of India and shares a border with China as well as the southwest of China. Bhutan has been working closely with the Indian military for a considerable amount of time, which suggests that it is supported by a global giant that possesses a force that is significantly more powerful than what Bhutan could ever hope to amass. It would be a waste of money to invest in your military when you can ask your big brother to defend you in the conflicts you face. The fact that China, Bhutan's other neighbor, is a powerful nation in its own right is one idea that could explain this phenomenon. Furthermore, it is a powerhouse that has been pushing the boundaries of its relationship with Bhutan for several years, as evidenced by the recent appearance of Chinese highways and even very small settlements within Bhutan's borders. It would appear that China is progressively pushing into Bhutan's territory, and India's response has been to station a section of its military in that region to effectively establish a perilous standoff that is not now generally reported. At the moment, things are rather tight. Furthermore, Bhutan is practically encircled by two giants, and any movement it makes with any of them may be provoked by the military of the other giant. If strengthening occurs, India may become enraged. India may incorrectly view Bhutan's increased military spending as a sign of a desire to be liberated from the cooperative arrangement that exists between the two countries, which is a condition that India would prefer to avoid. In a similar vein, a more robust Bhutanese army could be interpreted as a direct act of Chinese invasion, which could potentially inspire China to retaliate by fiercely protecting Bhutan's land rather than sneakily acquiring it. A nation that can continue to maintain a military presence, which was nearly useless due to simmering tensions between two superpowers that it could not hope to vanquish, is the result of this situation. Bhutan does not possess the capability to self-defense against China. India is the only country that can provide help to it, and to avoid provoking the anger of a second superpower, it must satisfy India by acting as if it were a submissive partner. If a nation's military is unable to effectively safeguard its borders, what function does it take on? Now that we have reached this point, our list is complete. A few recurrent themes have become apparent in this context. Many countries that have extremely weak military can credit their lack of strength to internal conflict. This is because internal conflict creates cracks that prevent troops from strengthening a nation by putting up a cohesive front. Inadequateness can be attributed to the placement of some of the other items on this list, the usage of obsolete machinery, or a lack of financial resources. Bhutan is a prime example of the latter, as it is a less powerful force that is safeguarded by two superpowers that are on the verge of engaging in a more hostile relationship. Did you like it? Tell us what you think of the video in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos.